I want to share with you something that I've been doing and testing out for about half a year. It's had a noticeable impact on my success in solo PvP and my overall experience with non-instanced content. So we're talking about mists, open world roads. It does not apply to corrupted dungeons or hellgates. And by no means is this any kind of a secret. In fact, many PvP focused players use this in some form or another, but it's time we talk about this more. Let me show you two very quick PvP clips and then I'll explain in detail what we're talking about. Here in the first clip I'm fighting as Daybreaker against another Daybreaker, and it kinda looks like things aren't going great. Although I dodge his E from distance, he hits a big damage impaler from Assassin Jacket and has a good HP advantage. But look at this, I use my Cultist Cowl and for 4 seconds he cannot fight back. His kiting tools are on cooldown and he just stands there looking as his HP disappears and I end up getting a nice kill. And now let's compare it to this situation. In this fight, I'm doing a decent job catching my enemy and staying on top of him, but this Chillhowl player is doing a great job kiting me. He constantly slows and auto attacks me as he's walking away. He has higher cooldown reduction than me and his boots get ready before mine. My E, harpoon and boots are all on cooldown now, but I have a magic trick, my Duskweaver helmet. Hitting my helmet makes him waste his boots and his Assassin Jacket, and I am able to catch and finish this kill. So what is this simple but awesome strategy that's going to change your life if you start implementing it more? I'm talking about the helmet swap. Let me explain the logic behind it, then how to properly do it, and then why this is actually a super simple way to instantly level up your solo PvP. For me, this whole idea started with Daybreaker. If you watched my guide or PvP analysis of Daybreaker fights, you've probably heard me say that to get the most out of that weapon's potential, you need more than one helmet. But over the course of about last 6 months, I've explored this approach for other weapons, and I am now very convinced that this is a simple yet very effective strategy to level up your solo PvP on almost any weapon. Let's talk about how to properly apply this idea to your PvP game. The basic idea of this helmet swapping strategy is to bring 2 helmets that are useful in different PvP situations, to cover all your bases, so to speak. The goal here is to make you as strong as possible overall and give you access to more different types of PvP. So, for example, let's say you're playing the one-handed spear, you might have correctly learned over time that fighting a Shadow Caller sucks, it's a bad matchup. But now, you found the Guardian helmet in your pocket, and suddenly, you have access to that PvP fight. This approach is viable for 95% of all solo builds and weapons in Albion Online. The only ones where you probably don't want a helmet swap is if your whole combo revolves around your original helmet. So for example, if you're playing Hellfire Hands with a stun on your helmet, probably you won't want to swap it in any situation. From my experience, the 2 best ways to think about your helmet swap strategy are the following. First, consider that you bring 1 helmet for kiting heavy fights and 1 helmet for very brawl heavy fights. So think about which helmet you'd prefer against a Frost Staff, for example, but then which would you prefer against a Battle Axe? And bring both of those 2 options. But secondly, if you zoom out a little bit and realize that in open world, mists or roads setting, most of your 1v1 fights are not honorable PvP duels where both sides shake hands and start the fight. Then you can start adopting the second approach. And the second approach is to bring 1 helmet for attacking and 1 helmet for defending. So essentially you have 1 helmet for when you are the aggressor, when you are the one chasing your enemies, trying to finish kills, and then another helmet for when you are in a defensive stance, when you are being attacked or forced into a fight by someone potentially stronger than you. If this idea is not entirely clear to you yet, don't worry. I'm going to go over 4 helmets which in my opinion perform the best in this helmet swap type of strategy, and as we discuss each and every one of them, it will become more and more clear to you what exactly I'm talking about and how exactly this looks like in real life. And the first helmet to talk about, which can be incredibly valuable and is the star of this strategy, is the Guardian helmet. The Guardian helmet is a powerful defensive, which is kind of universally useful in every fight, at least to some extent. But in some matchups, it is godlike. First of all, obviously curse staffs. Against a curse staff, and we're not just talking about one-handed curse, but any single curse staff, you can remove their curse stacks whenever you want with your Guardian helmet. And this is very powerful and can almost completely change the way that a fight goes against any curse staff. Like my example against one-handed spear versus Shadowcaller, it can be the very reason why you're even able to take the fight. Or if you have a build that performs generally okay against curse staffs, this will give you or can give you a huge upper hand. Another opponent against whom Guardian Helmet brings more to the table than your average defensive is the Bow of Badon. Because a big part of the damage from Bow of Badon E comes as damage over time. If you click your helmet right after you get hit by their E, you can remove that part of the spell and it's a straight up counter. And finally, of course, Axes, another weapon that uses damage over time. You can use Guardian Helmet to remove their bleeds, and remember that this doesn't just remove the damage you would have taken from the specific bleed, but in some cases, like against Battle Axe, this also changes how what their spells will do. Battle Axe E will heal a lot less if they hit it, the second E will hit a lot less if they hit it against you after you've removed the bleed stacks. So Guardian Helmet overall is a solid defensive for most situations, which in some particular matchups and fights will give you an extra superpower and will absolutely change it into a completely different fight. However, if you only use Guardian Helmet, which isn't a bad choice, but if that's the only choice you have when you go out into the open world or into the mists, then you are limiting yourself in one very important regard, and that is mobility. Guardian Helmet does nothing when the limiting factor of your build is that you need a bit more mobility for a specific fight or specific PvP situation. You cannot purge your enemies' boots or mobility like you can with some other helmets, and you cannot use it for yourself to get away or to kite your enemy. So it's a helmet that in some cases is very limiting and in some cases is extremely powerful and thus performs exceptionally well as being not the sole helmet or the sole option, but as one of two helmets as part of your helmet swapping strategy. The second helmet on our list today is the Cultist Cowl. This might just be the strongest defensive helmet in all of Albion. It has very good duration, good cooldown, and completely shuts down some very brawl heavy enemies and builds. And in many ways it is similar to the Guardian Helmet because it has a big problem. If you're in a fight where you need mobility, if you need to catch a bow player or a frost player, or even you just need to make sure you can finish off a bloodletter or double bladed after you've started winning the fight, suddenly your Cultist Cowl can become almost a useless item. So it performs very well as one of two helmets, but not so strong if it is your only option for every PvP fight. Do you see the fight happening on screen right now? This Blood Moon is 8-3 and I'm in tier 7. And although it's not a bad matchup for Daybreaker, this profit would not be possible if I didn't have the option to swap to Cultist Cowl when I came across him. Similarly to how Guardian Helmet transforms a couple matchups, so does the Cultist Cowl. Against very strong brawlers, against dual swords for example, against death givers, and to be honest many other daggers as well because daggers auto attack very fast, against battle axe even, you can almost, and against spears as well, you can almost win the fight off of just this one spell if you use your Cultist Cowl at a good time, like the example from the start of the video. So we have two good helmet swap options already. Let's talk about number 3, and that is the Dusk Weaver helmet. Now this is a bit of the opposite to Cultist Cowl or Guardian Helmet, which is why when it comes to helmet swap strategies specifically, one of my favorite pairing actually is to bring Cultist Cowl and Duskweaver. Duskweaver can give any weapon an amazing potential to be able to catch and stick on top of their targets. It can be good in any kiting heavy fight, whether you are the one doing the kiting or it's your enemy trying to kite you. If they are kiting, you can use it to catch them and stay on top of them, like I've shown in my videos and fight clips. But if you are kiting, you can first of all use it slow as you maintain distance, but secondly it performs the function which many kiters really suffer from lacking, which is having some sort of gap close once you do have enough of an advantage and you decide to go in to guarantee the kill. So Duskweaver can be amazing. But if the fight becomes more about standing closer to your enemy and brawling, you now pretty much have a useless helmet. And so I hope that you can see this pattern developing. We're talking about helmets which can be extremely powerful in specific PvP situations and then borderline useless or at least very weak in some others. And Duskweaver fits this description exactly and performs great as part of a helmet swap strategy. And helmet number 4, which becomes much stronger when it is one of your options and not your helmet for every fight, is the soldier helmet. Now this once again functions somewhat similarly to Guardian helmet. It's just a decent overall defensive spell. Even more than the Guardian, however, it can be pretty hit or miss. In some matchups it's amazing. If your enemy has a telegraphed big damage spell or some CC that you can react to, it's amazing to have the soldier helmet. Even against weapons like Daybreaker, if they use their E from far, soldier helmet is a counter. Against Chillhowl, you can deny them the E completely if you use your soldier helmet and get out of their E range. You can use it to counter enemies who have very telegraphed big damage spells or combos, like for example Battle Bracers, Hellfire Hands, even to counter the E from Bow of Badon. There's a lot of different situations where it is really nice. But then if they don't have one of those telegraphed spells, then it becomes barely useful at all. So if for some reason you're not convinced that Guardian Helmet is a fantastic swap, Soldier Helmet is pretty much the next best thing and will open up your PvP options by quite a lot, simply if you have that in your inventory and you're able to swap to it for maybe 1 or 2 fights out of 10. So these 4 helmets in my opinion stand out and become extremely valuable when you're looking at them as just one of your 2 options and not the only helmet you use. But there's 2 more helmets we need to quickly talk about because they've become very relevant as I've developed different ideas around this helmet swap strategy. And those 2 we need to quickly discuss are the purges, namely Fiend Cowl and Helmet of Valor. Now, both of these helmets kind of shine as a one-way answer to everything, and that's something I've talked about earlier in many videos. Having a purge is the most versatile and amazing thing that you can give yourself in solo PvP. But there is still a little bit of tendency with both of those helmets that they help you more in those kite-heavy fights when the question is about mobility, or when you are the attacker of the situation trying to catch and force someone to fight you. However, as an added bonus, something that the Duskweaver helmet cannot do, as an added bonus, if you're using a Fiend Cowl or Helmet of Valor and you figure out you don't need to purge your enemy's boots because they're just running into you taking the fight, you still have a powerful spell that will help you win the brawl. You can remove their Inferno, their Cleric Robe, their stacks, whatever the situation requires. So overall, both of these helmets don't really need a second one. Mostly, I would say. You can go with Helmet of Valor or Fiend Cowl and feel happy about almost all situations. But my strong suggestion and something that has helped me is to still kind of look at those helmets as just one of several options and to pair them with one of those cheap and super situational defensively useful helmets, namely the Guardian helmet or the Soldier helmet. So if you want to start experimenting more with this helmet swap strategy and see what it can do for you, and you're already using one of the Purge helmets, I suggest that you keep it on as your main helmet for most situations, but bring a Guardian helmet in your pocket when you match against a Curse Staff, or maybe a Bow of Badon, or maybe against the Battle Axe, and swap to that for those specific situations, provided you decide that mobility is not an issue for you for that fight. Or take a soldier helmet and swap for that if in the situations we talked about. Okay, so Helmet of Valor and Fiend Cowl are great, universal, almost universal helmets, but still have some room for a helmet swap strategy, and specifically for Guardian Helmet. This is my go-to right now for a lot of different weapons, and I absolutely love it. Equipping Helmet of Valor and having Guardian Helmet in my pocket for some situations. The second kind of simple strategy to start with, if you want to look into helmet swapping more now as you're here listening to me, then the second way to start it is to use Duskweaver helmet as your default in order to catch enemies, stay on top of them, and then bring one of the helmets that helps you win brawls as a backup option. Cultist Cowl, absolutely amazing, but if that's too expensive, then you can still go with one of those defensive ones. Or vice versa, you can run around the mists or open world using your Guardian helmet, ready to use it if you get attacked, but if you then get up into a fight where you would like to have extra mobility to catch your opponent or kite them, then swap to Duskweaver just for that fight. So try those things out. Let's talk a little bit about downsides of helmet swapping to see if this really is such a simple way to transform your PvP, or if there are actually some costs involved that you should think about or some problems with this. First of all, this isn't the downside, but if you're listening to this and thinking, oh, that's a cool idea, I will try it in a corrupted dungeon, don't forget that in corrupted dungeons you cannot swap your gear. So this only applies to open world type of situations and not instanced content in Albion. But the actual potential downsides we need to discuss are two. First of all, I know there's someone listening to this already thinking, holy shit, how can you be so sweaty about this game to even go further than selecting a loadout to bring backup items to then swap around? Now, yes, I hear you, and SBI does too. When SBI simplified the potion swapping or potion using mechanics, they said pretty openly and publicly that they don't want players to feel like they need to bring more than just the equipment they're wearing in order to participate in PvP. So SBI does not really like this idea of bringing swaps or having stuff in your inventory as backup that will make you stronger. So yeah, I feel you. But from my experience, even though yes, in Albion sometimes I am sweaty and trying to figure out the best ways to approach situations very tactically, in my experience, this is a super simple kind of approach or super simple strategy to take your PvP to a higher level. And the main reason for that is it doesn't actually change the fight itself. During a fight, you don't have more spells or more things to keep track of. You have the exact same situation as if you came with that new helmet that you swapped to. If your Guardian helmet was your only choice, that's the same fight. And you end up kind of having the same type of simple calculation and situation in a fight. When am I going to use which spell? All of that stays the same. But it does add a layer of choosing a bit of an extra spell or having an extra choice when you're setting up for a fight. So if you want to be really simple about your Albion PvP, this might not be for you, but believe me when I say it is not a hard thing to do at all. There are things that are happening during a fight that are 100 times more difficult to understand and keep track of than simply swapping to a helmet for a brawl heavy fight before the fight starts. And the second potential concern you or someone might have when thinking about implementing this strategy long term is of course the cost. Because you are increasing the cost of your equipment by bringing any additional items in your inventory. This also happens when you bring cabbage soup in order to have a food swap available, or if you bring several types of potions, which if you've been listening to my guides, you probably should be doing, at least once you start playing middle tiers, so tier 7 and higher. For sure you want to have several potions just to have some options for situations, and this will increase your cost. But if you look at the specific helmet swaps that we have been discussing so far in this video, then it's likely that it won't really matter. Unless you're doing the strategy with the Duskweaver plus Cultist Cowl, that's the only one where you need to test out whether it's worth it for you to spend that extra money on Cultist Cowl. Because relative to the rest of your build, if you're running some really cheap non-artifact items, maybe it's not worth for you. Maybe your best approach is to not spend money on Cultist Cowl and just avoid certain fights. But if you're gonna be doing it with one of those cheap non-artifact helmets like Guardian or Soldier helmet, then it really costs nothing. Compared to the rest of the build, it's not going to be important enough. Look at this example right now. This is what I'm wearing right now in the mists to try out this new fire staff, which by the way feels a lot like a spear to me when I play it. So this is what I'm wearing and this is where we're at. My overall build, or the things I've equipped right now, cost about 1.1 million, a bit more. My consumables around 700,000, which is a lot. I probably should not spend so much on these, but since this weapon is so survivable with a lot of mobility, it's not really a problem. I don't usually die unless I want to take a fight. And check this out. Tier 7 Guardian helmet, comparing to all that, costs 50,000. 50,000, this is nothing for just giving me the option. I will use this Guardian helmet if I run into a fire staff, a curse staff, or if I run into a battle axe and I decide that mobility is not going to be an issue in that fight, I don't need the helmet of valor to limit my enemy's mobility, then I will swap to Guardian helmet and I will be stronger for just 50,000 silver compared to the rest of the set. I hope that during these 20 minutes I've convinced you to start exploring in your solo PvP adventures, to start exploring this strategy that many experienced PvP players have been using for a long time and will continue to use until SBI somehow decides to patch it out, which is very possible considering their overall philosophy of what they want the PvP to feel like, but it's very difficult. It's difficult for me to imagine how they would change it, so for the foreseeable future, probably for years, this is going to stay and be part of the game, and I encourage you to give it a try and see what it feels like for you and what kind of helmet combinations you prefer and you feel will give you an edge in your PvP adventures. This has been Vic Zane, and I'll see you in the next one.